I'm back. Street Preacher is back again, dealing with the process of separation. And when I study, I do use different books and things that I read. But one of the main books, besides the Bible, that I use is this, a dictionary. Okay, in the dictionary, the definition to separate is to divide or keep apart by placing a barrier between, to go in different directions, to set apart from others. Single or individual is the adjective. Okay, to be set apart, to, be single. Well, separation is a process that we all must go through in life. Someone says I'm missing my umbilical cord because I have grown attached to it. Okay, well, that means there's always a separation from the time that you're being born. In order for you to grow, separation is needed. Sometimes physically, you got to be separated from people, mentally, emotionally. You have to learn to separate in order to move forward, in order to grow. And this process goes on from the time that you were born right up to the time you leave from here. Separation is a part of life. And I'm going to give you an example of separation through one of my childhood stories around Christmas time of watching Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Everybody remembers the story about Rudolph. He was a reindeer, and he was teased because he had a shiny nose, and it glowed, and so they made fun of him. They wouldn't let him play reindeer games and whatnot. And one day Rudolph separated and went off, and he ran into an elf. The elf, named Cornelius, I believe it was, who wanted to be a dentist. He didn't want to make toys. Anyway, they went off together, and then they got in a little battle with the abominable snowman, and then Cornelius went over the cliff with the abominable snowman, and Rudolph was by himself. Eventually, Rudolph grew. He came back. It was a storm. Santa Claus was trying to deliver gifts. It was like Rudolph, we get somewhere with that nose. Then he said, wait a minute, maybe this nose can help. And then, the story where he led the Santa sleigh through the storm and delivered the gifts through the storm. That just shows that it's a gift and a talent, like Rudolph with the shiny nose, that people might laugh at you because you have it, and it makes you different because you see it different. You act different. You look different. You are different. And people don't understand you or don't understand what it is about you. And you might not even understand. So you go through some ridicule and different things like that. But separation is required. And then you begin to grow. And as you grow, you learn more about it, and you learn how to develop your gifts and your talents and your uniqueness. And you learn to celebrate it as God will reveal it to you. You then realize that the time will come that there's a purpose for you and your gifts and your talents and you being the way that you are. So just like the story of Rudolph, you're gonna help a lot of people. You're gonna be a blessing to a lot of people once it develops and you grow and you mature. Now, to take it to the scripture, to the Bible, real quick about separation, it started where Adam and Eve, when Adam was alone, and God said it's not good for man to be alone, God put Adam to sleep, caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and then God took a rib from him, separated something from Adam. But when he separated the rib from Adam, he created Eve, the woman, and then he brought the woman to him. So sometimes some things that God will take from us is just to create something to bring back to us that will help us. So sometimes when things are being separated, we often cry when we got to separate from a person or things, or we can't do some things that we used to do. But it's just God's way of saying that at this time you don't need it. And then if he can make something better out of it, he'll bring it back to you, and then it'll help you out, and it'll help other people out at the same time. Another story in the Bible where Jesus walked on water. Many people have heard this story. I want to focus on the part where when Jesus was coming to the disciples, and the disciples was in the boat, and Jesus was coming off in the distance. They got afraid. They thought he was a ghost. Okay, all of the disciples, let me back up real quick. The story started when after he fed the 5,000 with the 2 fish and the 5 loaves of bread. All right, after he fed them, he told the disciples to get in a boat and go to the other side, and then he would meet them and he would take care of the crowd. So sometimes you see God will take a select few, took the 12, and separated them from the crowd. And he said he'll take care of the crowd. And sometimes in that crowd is your best friend, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your wife, your husband, your pastor, your church, your school, your job, you name it. It could be in that crowd. And God said, I'll take care of the crowd. Don't worry about the crowd. But I need you to go over here. So the disciples were going in the boat and got in a storm. But Jesus came off in the distance walking, and they thought he was a ghost. They became afraid. Now, all the disciples saw Jesus walking on the water. Then somebody said, it's the Lord. And then Peter said, Lord, is that you? And he said, let him know it was him. He said, well, if it's you, bid me to come out there. Let me come walk on the water. Let me do what you're doing. So Jesus told him to come on. So Peter gets out the boat. And then you see another separation, because now Peter is being separated in order to do something different. Peter went a little bit further and he stepped out of the boat, separating himself from the disciples, the rest of the disciples, and he began to walk on the water. Of course, he became afraid. He sank. Jesus, picked him up. But how many of the other disciples could say they walked on water like Jesus did? All right. Right. That's the point. So when you separate, you begin to do things that others won't do. I always said that the extra mile is never crowded. So usually the crowd is not going to go as far as you'll go when you set out to do something different. When you're a trailblazers or pathfinders, or you're doing something different that everybody might not agree with or understand, but you step out and you do something different. And the last example that I'm gonna give, and not the final, but there's many examples in the Bible. Before I get to the last one, Joseph is another good example, where he was separated from his brothers. They threw him in a pit. They took him out and sold him into slavery. He went into Potiphar's house. He was separated from his family. He was sold into slavery. But in the end, when he got thrown into prison after he was falsely accused of messing with Potiphar's wife, he was thrown into prison for 2 years. Well, Pharaoh had a dream. Joseph could interpret it. They called Joseph out to interpret the dream. Then he was elevated to second in command. It was a famine in the land. And because of the dreams and his ability to interpret dreams, the gift that God gave him, he was able to provide food for his family. So his family then, at this point, sometimes in the story about Joseph, well, there could be a separation that God is doing with you, that you won't go back to where you were, but everybody will come up to where you are, and then you'll be able to be a blessing to them. So that Joseph and Rudolph's story kind of is very similar in a way, where he had a gift. They got upset because Joseph could interpret dreams. His brother got upset at him, but it wasn't time for that gift to kick in. But as he grew up, and a little bit later, God ordered his steps. And sometimes the things we go through, we don't understand why we're being separated. But God has a purpose and a plan for you. Trust me. But the final separation that I wanted to look at is look at Jesus on the cross. He was on the cross, about to die. He was giving his life up, And so when he separated from his body. That means when he died, the Bible said it was finished. He said it is finished. He gave up the ghost. He left his body on that cross. But 3 days later, he came back into that body. In that body, he could do things like come through walls. You could eat food. It could be touched and different things. So that separation allowed him to do different things when he came back. So each time, all through life, there will be separation. But it's not a bad thing. Some people want to make it look like or feel like that it's the worst thing in the world to do things by yourself, or to be alone, or everybody is not liking me, everybody's not with me. I'm trying to tell you right now, straight out the mouth of the street preacher, that sometimes, and most of the times in your life, any great thing that you're going to do, any meaningful thing you're going to do, usually you're going to have to walk alone. But yet God is with you. You're never really alone, because God never leaves you. But sometimes it's people that he has to separate you from. so that you can accomplish the purpose that he has for your life. And it'll be a blessing to you and to everybody that's around you. So I want to leave that encouragement with you for all you that's going through that process of separation. Embrace it and be encouraged. Street Preacher signing off.